throws the light of the soul throws sparks that can send up flares, build signal fires, cause proper matters to catch fire. To display the lantern of soul in shadowy times like these, to be fierce and to show mercy toward others, both are acts of immense bravery and greatest necessity. Struggling souls catch light from other souls who are fully lit and willing to show it. If you would help to calm the tumult, that is one of the strongest things you can do. That's from Calissa Piccola Estes. You know her name. Okay, some other people coming in as we continue. Wonderful. So we're here, and most of us now, we're all experts on Zoom stuff. So therefore, please do mute yourself when you're not speaking. That would be great. We can all do that. Number two, if you need to want to say something, go to the chat, and we'll follow that up as we go into the program. And you can view however you want, the gallery or speaker, whatever. But we all know how to do this now, which is terrific. Now, I'm very glad that you're here this afternoon. I hope that you will catch the light on the soul as you hear and as we share in this program today. I'd like to introduce Rich Williams, who's our Emmy Program Chair, and he's going to introduce the program and our presenters. Welcome to you all, and thank you, Rich.
Thank you, Alan. So our program today focuses on social media and mental health, as you may have surmised. And there are movies and news reports, congressional briefings, community presentations, all on this topic. And social media is a potent force, creating habits, inculcating values, affecting the self-image and mood of those that use this powerful technology. And it's particularly true for youth and young adults in their formative years. So Emily will focus on this for today, and also on give you a pre-announcement. On April 27th at 9:30 to noon, we'll be having an in-person presentation. So please save that date. Annie Margaret of the Atlas Institute at CU will be offering some of the technical and psychological tools that she is offering to help young people find healthy ways to use technology and social media. And today we'll hear from local professionals about this issue as it shows up in their coaching and therapy practices and how they see the impacts on their clients and some sense of what they have seen work to promote healthy use of social media and technology. To do this, we have Ryan Dawson. He's a professional counselor and coach working with adolescents, adults, and families for more than 20 years in the Boulder area. And Marc Esenwein, therapist and activist for mental health in Boulder County, treating children and families. So Marc will lead the discussion of these issues, the consequences, and the success that they've seen. And we'll do a short Q&A or question and answer at the end. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat space whenever they occur to you, and our presenters will respond to them at the end of the presentation. So thank you for attending, and please turn your attention to our presenters, Marc and Ryan.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you, Richard.
Hi, everybody. Hey, so my name is Marc Esenwein. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I have the pleasure of having known Ryan Dawson for a number of years. I asked Ryan to help us learn about social media and gaming and its impact on youth, because 4 years ago he gave a presentation through the Parent Engagement Network that I attended, and he handed out some such good information. I've been carrying it around for 4 years. I use a lot of what I learned from Ryan all that time, and I have a large number of teenagers and young adults who use social media, who are on their phones, who complain to me that they get frustrated because get distracted with social media and they get distracted with TikTok and YouTube and Instagram. And some of them try to delete their accounts and then they get them back. There's some awareness now that social media can lead to some consequences. So I wonder, Ryan, what are some of the consequences that are well known now about social media and gaming?
Well, there's been some interesting surveys that have been coming out in the last few years. The Center for Disease Control has this one that's kind of like the gold standard of surveys. And they've noticed, as I'm sure you have too, Mark, and I have in my own practice, that there's been kind of this explosion of anxiety, depression, and different things. And they've been trying to find what the smoking gun here is going on with the youth. And one of the researchers out of San Diego, Jean Twenge, she's been able to kind of look at the data, and around 2012, the stuff really starts to pick up. When we start to look at the data, and coming in like in 2021, from 2011 to 2021, teens with clinical depression, it's more than doubled. From 2007 to 2019, suicide rate for those in their early 20s has gone up 41%. 10 to 14-year-olds, it's gone up 3 times, and girls four times. So, personally, I've been kind of wrestling with the digital stuff, because as a kid, I really turned to it for sanctuary, and working with clients, it was I've just noticed over the years how it's gotten more and more sticky and harder to work with. And now we're really starting to see some of these results come in, and like, okay, we need to figure out a new way to relate to all this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I noticed that some of my clients are actually staying away from like in-person social events because they feel depressed, and they use gaming as a way to feel better. And a lot of I have at least five boys that have social anxiety, and they stay in their rooms a lot. And they do meet with me, and they open up and they tell me that they're anxious, and that social situations seem to promote even more anxiety. And so I'm working with them to try to take, some time to get outdoors and to try to experience some wellness. But I'm really concerned, like you are, around how, especially social media, seems to be trying to hook these kids in. Like I noticed that most of my adolescents are on some kind of app where they're texting each other all day. And the number one app that I'm aware of is Snapchat. Can you talk about Snapchat, and why do kids want to use that app so much?
Right. So Snapchat, originally was designed for texting nudes, because they have these images that you can share and then they disappear, and so it gives this illusion of privacy. And that's been one of the problems with Snapchat in terms of kind of oversight, is that there's just like really no accountability about what's being shared, what the algorithm is pushing towards the kids, or what the basically the AI of the social media is also offering, because these things are disappearing and they come up in their feed. It's also a scoreboard. There's also like social obligation mechanisms in the Snapchat. I have a little slide of some of the emojis that I'll share here, and kind of just give a quick explanation of them, because it's just interesting. It's like something that growing up, and I grew up as a kid of the 80s and 90s. Like these things were not anywhere close to what was going on here. So hold on, let's get this. Are we able to see that, or okay, there it is.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, so you see like the one with the little baby. Okay, hey, that's a new person online. That's a new new friend to you, and the one with glasses is like, hey, that's your best friend. You guys communicate the most together. And then you start getting into some of the cringe emojis of like, oh, this person here is more connected to you than you are to them, or it's like this one is like, oh, you guys both have a mutual connection that they're more connected to. And it's just like, I can't imagine. Well, I can imagine because I work with the youth, but like what that starts to do. And then they also have it's so it's a social obligation that they start to feel, and they start to like compare themselves like this. The social media is constantly, putting ourselves in a, kind of an abstracted way of looking at ourselves from the outside, and like, what is this person? How's this person doing? What's the evaluation? Like all the social interactions they're not like relaxed casual things. They're being monitored, they're being scoreboarded. The kids that have more like aggressive behaviors online tend to get more promoted, get more likes. And the social obligation, Snapchat has this thing called streaks, and where it's, if you send an image to somebody and they send it back, then you're on a streak of two. And like this thing is like, if you drop a streak, it can feel catastrophic to the teenager. He's like, uh-oh, I dropped the streak. What is this going to mean? When I go into, school on Monday, if I don't have the streak going, is this person going to think I don't like them anymore? So there's this thing where kids will give their phones or their accounts to other kids to just keep the streak going while they go on vacation. So it's this whole added layer of obligation, responsibility, and constant checking that also creates some of this, some of the mental health stuff that we're seeing. And that's just Snapchat, that we're talking about.
Yeah, so thanks for that slide. That was good because I don't know about emojis. And, I was talking to my sister a little earlier about FOMO. She didn't know what FOMO meant. And I thought everybody did after I had you tell me what it was 4 years ago. But it's the fear of missing out. And I know that social media has that quality that if you have a Facebook or an Instagram account and you see one of your good friends posting a party or having a good time and you're not with them, you can really feel rejected and left out. So can you talk about that? How does FOMO work?
Yeah, and so that's one of those things where, with the statuses, the scoreboards, and then a bunch of kids go to a birthday party and they're going to take pictures, they're going to post them, and if there's 7 kids and you see you're not invited, that's like, it's like these things that like really impact the adolescent mind, because after about the age of 13, it seems that adolescents are pretty wired to start relating more to their peers and less to their parents, and maybe back on the savannah, that was the teens imperative was to kind of get out of out of the village or out of the tribe in order to like, find some new blood, so to speak. But, so there's this like primitive drive not to be missing out, and one of the things that I talk to about with my young people that I work with is that it's kind of a primitive drive. Now you have, a billion people online that you can relate to at any time. And it's more about finding these optimized relationships and having to be in the relationship all the time. But social media really exploits this idea of FOMO. It's one of their most powerful tools to keep people coming back. They don't want to miss out.
Yeah, and so one of the movies that I saw this year was one called The Live Project, and it was about a girl that grew up in Boulder, and she was constantly posting videos of herself. She was very creative, but she was just always anxious, just totally anxious all the time, because she was afraid that if she didn't return a text or call her friends within a certain amount of time, they were going to feel rejected. And so she had this like obligation that she had to return texts immediately. Is that also part of the anxiety that comes up?
Yeah, absolutely. It ranges from that, like, well, I got to be on this immediately because what does this mean? Especially if you're kind of in the early stages of a friendship. Oh, they didn't get back to me, or there's this thing they said, we're left on red. So that means they've seen the post, but they haven't responded. and that's like a death knell in the relationships of teens. So they know that their post has been seen or the message has been seen, but they just haven't been responded to. So there's this like intensity of all these, these loaded interactions where, it's definitely something new. And like, it's when you have that brain that's so impressionable to other people's impressions of you, it's powerful.
Yeah, and I know that it's happened to me. Like I texted someone and it took them like 2 days to get back to me, and I was starting to build a resentment.
Yeah.
You
Yeah. I
know,
mean, we're all part of that.
yeah. So, um, another thing that I would like to talk about around social media is Instagram, and there was some testimony recently about how Instagram knows that teenage girls are more at risk of suicidal thoughts and suicidal feelings when they're on their app more than 3 hours, 4 hours a day. Do you know about that?
Yeah. I mean, Frances Haugen came out a couple of years ago as a whistleblower. She worked at Facebook and she saw the internal documents, and that Facebook was aware of kind of the thresholds of users and some of the mental health stuff that was coming out. But Facebook is and it's called Meta now. It's gone on to say, oh well, 4 out of 5 kids, they don't have a problem with it. But 1 out of 5 teens, that's like 8 million teenagers have big problems with it. And there's been suicides and sexploitation and bullying and all kinds of things that has resulted in some really upset parents. And January 31st, there was a Senate Judiciary hearing where they had all X and Meta and Instagram as part of Meta, but and Snapchat and Discord, all the CEOs from them, and they were really grilling them, especially Mark Zuckerberg, because there's been this denial of it being addictive. And in making products, you can make an addictive product, but you can't claim that it's not addictive. And that's where the cigarette companies got in trouble years ago. And now they're really starting to get some of this data, and they're also showing how, Facebook is kind of, or Meta has hid behind some of the some archaic laws, and they're getting really called to the carpet. And there's some really upset parents there on the 31st holding up pictures, and the senators made Mark Zuckerberg turn around and apologize. So.
Wow. Yeah. So we got to do more than that. We got to find some ways to maybe legislate some of these companies. And so in Tuesday's Denver Post, there was a headline about this around wanting some legislation that actually I think some 17-year-old high school students are trying to introduce in the Colorado legislature. And they want to have some of the apps have pop-ups come up if teens are on their app more than an hour, and especially late at night, like after 10 o'clock. They want to make sure that kids are going to bed. What are you noticing about sleep deprivation? Because I'm seeing that a lot with my clients. I get so many clients that aren't going to bed until 2 or 3 in the morning, and then they try to go to school or they go to college. I mean, these are college students, they're high school students, they're even like elementary school students. They're like playing all these games till, late at night, and they're not getting enough sleep.
Yeah, I mean, sleep is one of the biggest drivers of mental health. I remember my doctor saying, if you want a 30% bump in performance and, feeling better in mood, like get a proper night's sleep. And that seems to be like one of the biggest creeps here in the attention economy, is that, there's only so much time. Schools are, more demanding than ever with extracurriculars. And it's like all the relating, and they have these phones, they have these, things in their pockets that, on average adults spending 4 to 5 hours a day on, and kids are picking up, 80 times a day back in 2016. That's 30,000 times a year. And so it's like there's this constant checking and the need to be online, and it's in their room, and they're not unplugged from it. And that's one of the things when I'm working with young people is like, okay, so what are you missing out on after 10 o'clock? and it's just the FOMO that kind of drives it, but it's like really compromising their health and mental health. And it's who knows what some of these statistics would look like if we all just slept better. I don't even know if I'd have a job if we all slept better.
Well, I mean, this is a big deal. And you and I have talked about Daniel Siegel and his Healthy Mind Platter. And he has like 6 things that he puts on the platter, and sleep is the pillar of self-care for everyone. We need to get a good night's sleep. And what I'm noticing is many of the kids that I work with just aren't. They're just staying up too late, and then they sometimes sleep through class. They sometimes don't get their work done, and then they feel even worse about themselves. So I think it's a big driver around good mental health and avoiding anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem.
Yeah, and that's an important consideration as we're talking about this, because it's important to know kind of, I think, where we're heading, because we can get a little reactive of just trying to, delete apps and ward ourselves off. But like, with this slide here, it's like, what are we aiming toward, and how do we, create healthy brain matter, especially in the teenage years, because when there's all these brain changes going on and the brain is optimizing to have that sleep time and the meditation time and the play time and the in-person connecting time and deep focus time, which is another thing that, social media, in the internet is just constantly interrupting our ability to deeply focus, and when we talk about success going forward in life, our ability to deeply focus and to solve problems and to think through things and not just have shallow kind of Google brain learning. That's one of the big challenges. And that was one of the big challenges of the shutdown, is like a lot of the kids were just using, shallow learning, and they didn't get a lot out of that year online because they were relying on Google to answer all their questions.
Yeah, so that's a good point. But on your slide, you had something called playtime. Now,
Oh, yeah.
I get into a little dilemma because I want, my clients, especially that really enjoy Minecraft or, some of the creative games, I want them to use creative games and not maybe the shooter games. And so I'm trying to help encourage them to do playtime in the right way. But I don't want them staying up late. I don't want them to be on their games for more than an hour or two every day. And many times the same thing is said for not only gaming but YouTube's. These kids, they don't even watch TV. They go on YouTube and they watch these little videos, and on TikTok as well. And they're just watching these little brief, short, like digital movies, and they tell themselves, I'm just going to watch for a few minutes, and then hours go by, and then they like feel some disgust that they just wasted so much time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, how are you feeling as you're using it? That disgust that comes up later. And like, it's like you've kind of wasted the day, and that happens really frequently. Like one of the things that I've found that's been kind of interesting, having been working with these issues for years. I don't know if you remember, Marc, I had a video game group when I was at mental health.
I remember that.
Yeah, and the idea was to pull in, young guys to get together to do a little therapy, but they'd also play a video game together in person. And it was, we were able to really get some kids that were unwilling to participate otherwise. So it's a very powerful thing. And that's, when I look at video games, that used to be the big concern, right? But what's turning out is that like video games seem to be a little more, even the shooter games, benign, because there's a social interaction happening. There's teamwork. There's like real time things that are like, you're taking part in. You're not just looking at this like abstracted view of yourself and comparing it and comparing your bodies and comparing your status. And, they're actually participating in something that's a little more meaningful. Although there are games that have what's called random number generators. And so they've just basically made them into slot machines, and those are the mobile apps and the mobile gaming. And, the gaming industry right now it's bigger than sports and film put together, or sports and, music put together. It's massive. And and it's only growing as mobile games grow. And it's like, some of the games can be a little predatory too when they are designed just as slot machines. They're all luck based. They're not merit based. I think what you were talking before with like Minecraft is like, you know, it's like you actually have to be creative and you're working together often to do these things. And you know, that's one, you know, as I'm working with young people, that's one of the things I'm listening, like what kind of games are they playing? How are they playing it? Like who are they playing with? You know, who are the people like they're online with? And some of them they don't know, but they have a big influence on what's going on in their minds.
Yeah, as a therapist, I'm like always interested. What kind of games are you playing? Because there's some that I just really think are almost toxic, like Grand Theft Auto. I know that some kids don't even play the game. They just launch their cars off of the on ramps to see how much distance they can fly their car.
Mm-hmm.
Or, they do things that are out of the ordinary with it. And that seems creative. But I mean, there's a lot of shooter games. There's a lot of games that are all about winning, like Fortnite. I turned on ESPN one time and found a big tournament at Flushing Meadows for Fortnite athletes. They call them like esports athletes, and
Mm-hmm.
the prize money was $3 million. And so then these kids get into this fantasy of like, I want to be one of them, I want to get
Mm-hmm.
really good. And then they spend thousands of hours on these games trying to get better. And along with that, they post or watch other gamers on YouTube, and they'll watch YouTube videos on how to play games and get tips for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah. 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 There's this, you know, when I hear that kind of what you're talking about, that kind of build up, you know, there's this term that somebody is heavily online, you know, and there's a certain look to them. They tend to like be at, you know, either quite large or quite skinny, you know, and they tend to be a little more ashen. They're not getting outside. They're not getting fresh air so much. And, you know, a lot of them are chasing these fantasies of being a professional gamer. And I've worked with a few and they don't quite game. They take good care of themselves. If actually you look at what professional gamers look like, they go through athletic regimens. They have to keep their mind and their body sharp. They you know, they have like incremental planned growth in terms of how they're working. They're not just casually playing. So one of the things that I when I'm working with somebody that has that kind of aspiration, I actually try to encourage them to get competitive, see how you I mean, test it. Are you actually in that tier? Because you know, there's millions and millions of players online, and the chances are you're probably not in that top 1% that's making the money, you know, but they're incredibly popular. And it's to dispel the fantasies, you know.
So I don't know what to do. I have a bunch of middle schoolers who play VR games, and they play Fortnite, or now they have Minecraft player versus player games. It's a kind of a new way of playing Minecraft where you're competing with someone else. And they're posting these videos on their YouTube channels and trying to get subscribers.
Yeah.
And so I have a client, he's got 80 subscribers. He's just starting out. That sounds, just fine. It's benign. But his
Mm-hmm.
friend has 500,000 subscribers on his Gorilla Tag YouTube channel. And now all his buddies are trying to be like him because he's making $2,000 a month because he has so many subscribers.
Yeah.
So what do you say to some of those kids?
Yeah, well, plan B, right? That's your plan B. You can get that going. You know, school, you know, doing the healthy mind platters, the plan A, keep yourself healthy, fit, mentally well. And if you're able to construct that kind of life, more power to you. You know, to be an influencer is the number one, you know, social media influencer, YouTube influencer is like the number one aspiration of American kids. You know, in part because the algorithm drives that kind of thing. You know, in China, they have a different algorithm on TikTok. TikTok's a Chinese app, and it's like quite popular. Instagram and TikTok are kind of the big two in terms of entertainment. But TikTok's algorithm to the West, it's like pranks and fights and dancing girls, you know, and so we have this influencer culture. In China, they show like social achievements and science and, you know, all kinds of things. That's what the algorithm prioritizes, what they put in their feed. And they still want to be an astronaut, and that kind of thing is their number one aspiration. So it has such an impact, you know, what we're consuming online. But coming back to the young people, it's definitely about like trying to reality check and like get the less heavy use online, you know, to balance that out a little bit. And it sounds like you've had some success with that, which is great. It's hard to do.
Yeah, so you mean this term you're using, heavy use, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, especially when they're not getting out and getting some sunshine. So I try to promote that as much as I can. And I have a college student. Now, when I first met him, he was just playing League of Legends all the time. He didn't have any plan in his life, and he was just wasting his time playing League of Legends until 3 in the morning. Now he's at CSU, and he's joined an esports team where he's on a team and they play League of Legends matches on Saturdays. And
Yeah.
he's like, his self-esteem is like growing, but he's also having to learn some time management skills because
Totally.
he's also going to college now.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I give him a lot of compliments trying, you know, to get enough sleep and to do some playtime and enjoy himself, but also, you know, remember that he's a student and he needs to spend some time doing some schoolwork. So there are some ways and solutions where social media and gaming can work for kids. They just have to be guided. And I think that, you know, you talked about these algorithms, and I'm not even sure how they work because I think you told me a story about a girl who she went on YouTube and asked about diets, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden she was sent a bunch of stuff on anorexia. I
Yeah.
don't want to hear about that. That's going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and the thing is, once that gets into your feed, you're, you know, it's there, you know, and you're looking up healthy eating, and you're just a couple clicks away on YouTube from an, you know, anorexia videos. In your Instagram feed, you're getting shown these kind of promotional things. If a kid goes online that's feeling a little depressed and wants to hear, you know, that kind of reflected, I think that's, you know, one of the things we desire as humans, like to see, you know, in a conversation that matches our inner space. And, you know, you hear with the heavy music and some, you know, online as well. But it's like, you know, they're to go on and to hear somebody talk about depression, then like the suicide thing starts coming up, and like pro suicide conversation, you know, and it's just like that stuff has a way of, you know, at the right time at the right place, it's a huge problem. And that's the kind of stuff that, you know, Meta is getting called to the carpet for, and TikTok, and, you know, the way their algorithm is designed to give you something you can't help but view. It's not what you want to view, it's what you can't help but look away from, you know. And it doesn't take, and the algorithm is just kind of stuck. And that's one of the things that they're trying to do is like, okay, we got to be able to reset these algorithms, you know, to give our brains a break. And like from what we can't help but view, it's like, okay, instead of having to delete the whole app and make a whole new thing, you know. And kids can get really protective of an algorithm. If you know, if a parent wants to look at their thing, like, don't click on anything because it's customized to me, you know. And that's one of the things that is important as adults, is to understand that like what your version of Meta is, or Facebook, or what your version of Instagram is, not the version your kids are getting. You know, if Meta knows that you're like you know, middle class, upper middle class, educated, uh you know, adult, you're going to get a more sanitized version. They're going to actually like police the content a lot more than if they detect that it's a kid. They're because they're you know, they're trying to get them hooked and give them all the bells and whistles, and they're gonna have quite a different feed, you know. And that's a huge part of the problem.
Yeah, so it came out that Snapchat was hiring behavioralists to try to get kids to come back to their app as much as they can during the day. And so, I mean, behavioralists know about these reward systems like
Absolutely.
variable reward schedules. And I heard that even adults love Facebook, so that instead of getting likes when they happen, Facebook was saving them until you had like a whole bunch of them, and they would drop them on you, and then, oh my God, I'm going to do some more posting. I'm going to go on Facebook even more. And it works. It works
Yeah.
on these reward systems.
Yeah, I know for me, like with the ice bucket challenge came around a while back for ALS, and my mother-in-law passed away from it, and we did the ice bucket thing, and I shared it, and just saw how many likes, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. I was like, wow, my own psychology as a grown adult brain, I'll use that in quotes, adult brain, but like I wanted to see it. I can't imagine what it is for a 9, 10, 11, 12-year old. And, it's like, it's super compelling. We just, that's the appetite. We can't ever satiate is how do other people feel about us? What are they thinking? Do they like us? Are they approving of us? At any age.
Yeah, so this is called, when the behavioralists talk about it, they want to get a dopamine hit in
Mm-hmm.
people's brains. So dopamine is our pleasure drug in our brain, and the pleasure center gets activated, and they are trying to manipulate users on gaming and social media and watching videos and all the ways that the internet is used for entertainment. Now, we think we're getting close to the end of our presentation, but I want to point out that the internet can be a source of positivity, and like it can really help connect people to one another. It can
Mm-hmm.
help with communication and building relationships. And so, as a therapist, I'm constantly trying to shape the conversation that way. How can you like build your social network? If you want to be online, how do you meet new people, and how do you increase your community, and how do you share some things about your life without getting competitive? Do you
Yeah.
think that there's some ways to do that that parents should know about?
Well, I mean, the research seems to be that the more you participate actually is kind of like protective of some of the mental health stuff. So it's the people that kind of what they call lurk, and compare themselves to other people. They're comparing their real selves to like the highly sanitized, filtered AI version of other people. But it's a super powerful tool, and I think this is where the complexity in the conversation is. It's like to be able to manifest a dream, to be able to start a business, to be able to make connections all around the world around an interest. You can have community around anything. It's a miracle. It's miraculous technology that we're able to be here and have a conversation like this. So how do we use it in like effective ways? And like one of the frames that I work with is screen candy versus screen vegetables. Like what's the stuff that's just made to evoke a dopamine hit that makes you feel good? And we do know that once dopamine gets pushed, that same part of the brain that feels pleasure also registers pain. So, once you get the hit of dopamine, then you get the hit of pain. And if you keep pushing on that pleasure button, then you just get more and more of the pain. And the pain kind of sticks around for quite a while, up to a month. Like these month detoxes are what's been recommended. And there's a really interesting book called Dopamine Nation by Anna Lemke, if you want to know more about that function. And helping young people understand the neuroscience behind it is like really important. But how do you use it effectively, and how do you create a little space when you log in and you're not just chasing the tickle, chasing a little dopamine hit, just a little mindful space, a little mindful action, so you're not just coming from that want, that craving, because that's part of the pain is craving. If we give into that, then we're just starting to chase the dopamine. We build the dopamine tolerance and on to where it can be a little bit
Yeah, that's why, I'm using these conversations as a way to guide the internet, because there are like some kids that I work with that are under the age of 13 that I don't think should be like getting smartphones, and they all get them. Like there's maybe some apps they shouldn't have on their smartphones. There's ways that parents can like look at the age of the kids and what they're ready for, and
mm-hmm.
to also use these apps when if for example you're feeling down, or if you're going through a breakup, or when there's something going on in your life, you probably should stop using some of these apps and some of these social media platforms.
Yeah, like keep checking those apps, like pushing them to where they're harder to get to, especially ones that are just for like entertainment or feeling good. and yeah, just make them harder to find, and sometimes deleting the app. Like a lot of my young clients have started to like delete an app when it starts to get out of control from YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, and they'll try to come back to it to like work their relationship with it, and it's it's a challenge. I do have one slide, if you don't mind. I just want to share before we hop into the Q&A, and it's on this idea of dopamine, but it's also it's illustrative of like if we move into pain, we actually get more sustainable dopamine. And this comes from Anna Lemke and Andrew Huberman, who's got a great podcast online. But you can see this bottom line of the person who seeks pleasure, ice cream, and the junk food, and the what's going on online there, and then all the way to drugs, and they're getting this dopamine hit, but it keeps bottoming out to where they don't have any motivation to do anything. But if we move into pain, we get the bump back up of the dopamine just naturally. Meditation, ice baths, or getting outside, doing exertive things, doing hard things. It's like we get a dopamine high for a while. And so that's the kind of the natural, sustainable way. And just to really see this, some of the stuff that's online is kind of like, especially the dopaminergic stuff, is like, treats. There, it's not something that you want to have a steady diet of.
Okay, well, listen, we could go on and on. I'm sure we could go for another half an hour easy, but I want to just like stress that there are some, positive uses for social media and for gaming and for, YouTube's. I was watching Stephanie Ruhl on her show, and she got on Instagram and posted about her dyslexia and sent it out, and she said she got hundreds and hundreds of people that replied to her about their dyslexia and how it brought them together to know that they're not alone. And that's the powerful influence, I think, that Instagram and texting apps and Facebook, and I think we have to just be careful around kids being on TikTok and on YouTube all day. So that's what I want to leave it. Just make sure if you have some kids, or even yourself, and you're finding that you're spending too much time on those websites or on those platforms, tell yourself that to do a detox. Do it for a day or a week. It's good for you. All right. Okay, so let's find out if we got some questions. I got one here. Ryan, does gaming change kids' brains? Does it actually change their brains?
I mean, the short answer to that is yes. Like the brain is an adaptive organ, right? So it adapts to the environment it's in. It's not saying this is the way I want to go. It's just like if you're showing a lot of fast imagery and intensity, it's gonna wire itself for that kind of experience. So yeah, I think whatever we expose our brains to, it starts to change the brain. It creates new connections, and that's why and when you get something that feels really good, especially if it's unexpected, if you're on an app or in a game, it's you really want to keep doing that, and then it builds that connection. We're always chasing. Our brains are wired for times of scarcity and for distraction. So if we get something that's very compelling, we will chase it, and if it keeps our attention, it'll start to build those pathways. Dosage matters. Dosage, like you were saying, Marc, that dosage of any of the screen media matters. It's a big frequency and dosage. It's like a drug.
Yeah, and so I also try to caution kids that want to be influencers. They have this fantasy, oh, I'm going to get subscribers, I'm going to make my YouTube channel like number one, around a certain game, and they want to make money. And I think, I hope that parents can talk to them about this so they're not, chasing something that will ultimately get them disappointed and frustrated. So if anybody would like to ask a question, go ahead and unmute and go ahead and ask us. Otherwise, I'll ask Sue Brightman's question. Do therapists ever ask or suggest that people use meditation or prayer? And I'm going to tell you, Sue, that my Healthy Mind Platter says yes. There's a spiritual aspect of, it's called time in. Time in is on the Healthy Mind Platter, and time in is about doing some self-evaluation, doing some meditation, doing some mindfulness practices, including, how am I doing, and checking in with oneself, and taking a break from thinking. Like, our brains can be fatiguing if we just listen to all these thoughts we have all day. We need a break from it. And I have a handout I give kids who say, "Oh, I can't meditate," and it's a handout with 15 benefits of meditation, right?
And there's some nice apps for meditation too, like Headspace and Calm. I try to work with the world that the kids are in. So, or they'll find, meditations on YouTube, but yeah, having that time in, and just, it helps to integrate the brain to be with what sensation is. And, in prayer, to kind of like face life, and to create a perspective that also is, not just about the problems or chasing something, but about gratitude and some larger things.
Okay. Let's see. Here's a question. How does AI interact with Snapchat and Instagram? Does AI have any impact on those platforms?
I mean, you could call the algorithm actually like social media's AI. There, it's detecting what's going on, how you're using it, how long you're viewing something, it's going to link it back to this metadata of people like you that have also viewed that, and what kept them on. And so it's like, that programming, that intelligence, it's kind of doing its own thing. I mean, and I don't know if we're talking about like Chat GPT AI, but that can be helpful for research. But they're doing a lot more oversight right now with the AI, because I think they've realized the mistakes of just turning social media loose and letting those algorithmic AIs and seeing what's happening to people. So they're really trying to be more conscious of how this next generation of like computing is released to the public. So
Yeah, so that's a good point. I mean, algorithms are AI, and so when they're recommending new videos to kids, like for example, they're looking up depression. I have an anecdote about a young man who was in our congregation who suddenly committed suicide, and the reason why he did is he diagnosed himself online. He went online. He didn't talk to a doctor or any kind of adult. He just went online, diagnosed himself with bipolar disorder. And then when he looked up the treatment for bipolar disorder, he didn't find any remedies. He said everything he looked up when in his suicide note said that it was hopeless. There was no cure for bipolar. And he ended up taking his life, and his parents were so distraught. They really wished he could have reached out and talked to them.
yeah.
But, this is another thing about kids looking up and diagnosing themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a bit of the generational divide too. It's like, because Google has all the answers, like they don't need to use adults or use connection or relationship as much to discuss what's actually going on. And if there's one thing for parents, the parents that are on this call, is like, one of the best pieces of advice I've heard, and I recommend it, is like just to be very generous with any kind of consequencing for what kids are doing online, because the best thing you can do is have access to what they're seeing, and so not to like punish if they do something wrong so much, but just to really get a sense of what's going on. And they're going to make mistakes, they're going to share confidential information, all that kind of stuff, maybe overspend or get the parents credit, but you do want to know what they're seeing, because it's having such an impact on their mental health and well-being.
Okay, so I think we're pretty much done with our presentation, and if there isn't any more questions that someone would like to ask, I'm going to turn it over to Alan or to Rich.
if I may, I appreciate the invitation to be here, and I hope it served people. If you want to find me, you can find me at ryanhdawson.com, ryanhdawson.com, and I'm a licensed professional counselor here in the Boulder community.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Brian, because you know so much and you've helped me help my clients. So appreciate you. Thank
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate yeah, it's good to see you again, Mark, and good to meet some new people today and to hear the mission of this group. So, you know.
Yeah, I'm Alan. Great conversation between the two of you. It's terrific. I just saw Carrie raised her hand. Did I see that? Carrie, would you like to add
Go ahead,
something?
Carrie.
No, it's Sue, I think, who had her
Hi,
hand.
yeah. So thank you, both. Thank you, everybody. And just one of the very last things that was said by Mr. Dawson about, how we need to see what our kids see. And my son is 12. And at this point, he doesn't have a lot of screen time or exposure. He doesn't have a phone. And so I am not on social media. But I know that I need to educate myself. See, that's why I'm here, because eventually he will be on social media because I realize that's the world we live in. Is there a way for, I know there are parental controls and all that, and but is there a way, like in my own searching, like on the internet, right? I can go and I can see my history, right? So is there a way with a kid's device where you could go back and just see everything that they did today? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Beyond just, where did they look on the internet? Like what games did they play? And like a whole kind of summary. Oh, there you are. Okay. You weren't on my screen. I didn't know if you were still on. Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, it's tricky to know exactly what's going on, and that's where that relationship comes in so strongly, that to be generous and like you're not going to like, it's just important we talk about that. One of the things that I recommend for parents is delay it as much as possible first. I think you're it's wise, and I don't know why it's any different than having a driver's license, because the stakes are so high once they get online, and the mental health stuff, the results are coming in. That seems like it's pretty darn dangerous and impactful if you're one of the 5 kids that is having a bad reaction to the social media experience. But like to be able to, at the early stages, intermittently kind of check what's going on, check the digital footprint, like what's the algorithm on TikTok showing your kid, what's the algorithm on Instagram showing your kid. Snapchat's more difficult once again because it deletes. And so that's where that relationship, they'd be able to talk to them, like, what are you seeing? What are you concerned about? Is there anything that's been upsetting? What is anything that's exciting? Just and being once again as generous as possible in how you handle those situations. And so because access is kind of is golden here. So
as far as the digital footprint, I love that term. As far as the digital footprint goes, other than, I feel like my son and I communicate about lots of things, including, screen use and what's okay and what's not okay and why, and, the whole thing. So other than checking like their internet history, like I could do for myself, is there a way to see their overall digital footprint for the day, for example, or is that like not a thing that's available?
Well, certain smartphones have like usage apps. The iPhone has, how long have you been on a certain app? How many times have you picked up? Those kinds of things. You can start to see like, it's more like quantitative versus qualitative. Like you don't necessarily see what they're saying. That's where the algorithm's more qualitative. I'd be tracking kind of both of those things and when they're using it, and and there's something called the cohort effect too. If like everybody, like you have a 12-year-old son, if all his friends have smartphones and are on TikTok, he's going to want to be, or he's going to feel really left out. And like he can have some, mental health issues from not being included in the group, so it's like, it's a tricky time. It's a tricky time.
Well, so far, unfortunate because his other 6th grade friends don't have their iPhones yet either. You know, they all have the watch, right? So they can communicate with their parents. Their parents know where they are physically, you know. But his friends have not yet made that next jump either, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so do we, Ryan, I see you're rolling your hand up. Go ahead and ask your question.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you again for doing the Zoom meeting on this. This has been hugely important from a science standpoint for us. And I echo the previous commenter's question too, as somebody who's the dad of a 12-year-old boy. What we've done, we've gone kind of the opposite way, because we were seeing that same effect that Ryan just pointed out, where his friends were getting phones. And we started hearing grumbles of this from parents of friends that, hey, we're for 6th grade because he's moving into middle school. Now we have, we really want to get him a phone or something similar to that. And it's less of a question and more of a comment of something that's worked for us. Because we knew that his friends were going to have phones. We knew his friends were going to be kind of introducing him to social media. Number one, he's not on Snapchat, and he will not be on Snapchat. But we've introduced a third-party software to his phone called Bark. I don't know if you've heard of this software or not, but Bark's available for both Apple and Android devices. And it's hugely invasive to his phone, but it also sets up a VPN to my phone and will alert me if any of one of many certain terms are actually used in his text messages, in his interactions online, and any kind of text messaging that he does, and even in his emails now. And that has been hugely important, because we get a daily kind of synopsis of what he's been talking about with his friends, and it will only alert if there's something concerning, something dangerous, something violence related, something alcohol related, and yes, it is BARK per the question, and it's been very well received by our 12-year-old boy. He knows flat out that we're monitoring everything. And I can't say from a scientific standpoint or sociological standpoint if that is going to be good or bad in the long run. But I can tell you that because he knows that we're monitoring, he self-polices his conversations, which is, at least as a 12-year-old boy goes, tends to be more on the up and up for any of the interactions he has. But thank you again for all the comments and all of the information.
Thank you, Ryan, for telling us about that app. And
that's awesome.
You know, I think 12-year-olds need to have that kind of monitoring. I'm not sure that your 17-year-old is going to be so happy with it, but I'm glad you're looking at what they're paying attention to. Okay, so we have an annual meeting that we want to hold now. So for those of you that want to join us, please do. We're going to have our annual meeting now, right, Alan?
Yes, and before we do that, I want to say we want to thank you all who's come. We thank you for the questions, for more information. Marc and Ryan, you're both engaging, and you actually appreciate each other and know each other and work great with those that are in need, I'm sure. So if anyone needs more information about INPE, it's on the screen, info@inme.us. If you'd like to make a donation, we also welcome that. And the way to do that, again, through our website or at www.inme.us.donate. So I think this does come to the time that we really wanted to thank everybody who got to this particular point. And as you are now inviting us, Marc, to join in the annual meeting of INME. All those who would like to continue, sure, stay on. Otherwise, we're so glad that you came this afternoon. And it seems like the wind has shut down a little bit, but there's a lot of good energy and that we heard this last hour. Any other comment from anybody else as we kind of move into what's going to be our annual meeting? I want to thank you, all those who came, be part of it. And I hope you stay in touch with us, be part of the INME newsletter. You can just go to info@INME US again, and you could, if you're not receiving the newsletter, we're glad to have you add your name for that. Thank you.